Hello and welcome to the national edition of the Armstrong-Williams Show. And you know, now that the elections are over and people are very clear-minded of the direction that this country is headed, you know, one of the things that the election has shown that people really don't care as much about labels as they do about what is it that can move them forward, whether it's in their own household. They struggle. I think many people have lost sight of just how many Americans are struggling. I think most Americans want law and order. They want common sense at the border, and they want common sense when it comes to spending abroad. And you are familiar with Bruce Fein. You know, he's often on our platforms periodically, but many of you are meeting the state's attorney for Prince George's County, Maryland, for the first time, the Honorable Aisha Braveboy. She joins us, and she joins us because I consider her to be a reasonable voice, someone who's willing to work across the fence and has a common sense approach to law and order, and especially what America needs now, because I think both our guests today is exactly where most of the American people are, and that is they just want government to work for them. And let me welcome you both, Ms. Braveboy and Fein, to the platform. How much do you think Trump will impact not just the rule of law, the state prosecutors, this crime that people want under control? I noticed there are Democratic mayors who are saying they're going to fight him on the deportation of immigrants. What would you think can work with all sides?
You know, we're going to have to figure out a way to work together. However, I think the problem that a lot of Americans see, not just Democrat or Republican, is the idea that the justice system does not work equally for everyone. You now have a president who had 34 felony convictions and will likely not see the inside of a jail or prison, where there are regular Americans who have committed offenses and have had to pay for that behind the walls. And so the question about the rule of law, the fairness, and the application of the law is something that is going to be on the forefront of everyone's mind and agenda. I can see a scenario where defense counsels will be arguing that their clients should not have to face prison time because we haven't subjected everyone in our system who have been convicted to a term in prison. I think that's a very real issue and argument that will be argued throughout our courts in this country.
Challenge her or disagree with her?
Well, first, a little history, because what she's described is exactly what happened when President Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon before trial, despite the open evidence we had on White House tapes having him involved in obstruction of justice, which is why he resigned rather than go through impeachment trial. And the arguments are exactly made. Mr. Nixon obstructed justice, he gets a pardon, why me? But I think that notwithstanding your observation, number one, we don't know what's going to happen yet. There's a sentencing for November 26th, so it's premature to judge what Judge Merchant is going to do. I do think that we had in the last election an indication at the prosecutorial level that those, and out in California, when they repealed the statute that said if you steal only a small amount, you know, you don't get to have a criminal record, that the American people voted and installed district attorneys like you who don't want to blink at crime. Now, there's always an issue about justice. One, we want it to be even-handed, but two, we don't want someone to say, I committed a crime, but somebody else did, and therefore let me go, because that's a cure worse than the disease, right? Then everybody gets off, and we don't want to go down that road, and we didn't finally, even with the Richard Nixon pardon and the unevenness there. But I do think, on a different matter, this is not Mr. Trump, but when he nominates to be Attorney General,
correct,
Matt Gaetz, who certainly was under investigation with criminality. He has a House Ethics Committee report. Jim Jordan says we don't want to know what's going on, because remember, to be Attorney General and to be denied that position is not to go to jail. It means, hey, you're not inspiring confidence that the law will be administered fairly. I think that's a huge blunder. And you need someone at the Attorney General's office, just like the White House, to be of suspicion in order to give confidence in the administration of justice. Now, following on another unknown we have.
Before we get to the unknown, let me have you respond.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me just say that when I was elected, I said that I would take crime seriously, whether it is, property crime or violent crime. Crime impacts people personally. And so we will look at a case and look at the merits of a case, look perhaps at the background of the defendant to determine what is fair and what is just under those circumstances. But I certainly want to be painted correctly, which is someone who does believe in law and order. That's important in our society. Also, I agree that Matt Gaetz sends the wrong signal, but I think that is a symptom of the larger problem of someone who can get away with it. Now you have nominated someone who's going to likely get away with potential crimes or at least wrongdoing.
Not face the consequences of his behavior.
Correct.
Because he knew the House committee was coming down.
Correct.
With his judgment, and that's why he resigned immediately.
That is correct.
And it looks as though the president is aware and he's providing cover for him.
And it also looks like the president wants someone in the Department of Justice, running the Department of Justice, who would be willing to cover up crimes to benefit his administration.
And someone he can control.
And someone he can control.
And we'll be back. Don't go away. Ms. Braveboy, how do you see the 2024 election shaping the future of the judiciary at the federal and the state levels?
Well, I am very concerned. I'm very concerned because of some of Donald Trump's current selections to head very important agencies in our government. I'm very concerned that the judicial selections that he will make will also be reflective of individuals who will do his bidding, who will not ascribe to the rule of law, and who will not be fair-minded in how they administer justice. I am very concerned about that.
But it is shown, even when it dealt with the cases that were in their jurisdiction, judges that Trump opponent did not always favor him. They upheld the rule of law. We've seen that.
In some cases, yes. But think about his own attorney generals who told him no. Where are they now? Nowhere to be found. Because anyone who challenges him, they get cast to the side. These federal judges, the reason why they're still there is because he cannot remove them.
How do you balance, because there's merit to what she said, how do you balance this out so the American people can have faith that justice is blind?
Number one, Congress has to do its job with oversight. It's got to be transparency, and the media does as well. You got to ask questions so that, and that doesn't happen today. Congress has basically wiped up shop. Jim Jordan, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, said, we don't know anything about Mr. Gaetz. Forget it. Wait a minute. This is a huge check, maybe even more important than the law, is public opinion and ostracism, that you cast aspersion on people who don't stand up for the right ideals. I know it's a difficult balance because the Department of Justice is part of the executive branch, and the president obviously nominates the head of the department. Bobby Kennedy was John Kennedy's brother. But it has to be a culture that causes everybody to feel we have to do the right thing because in the long run it's good for the country rather than, well, I can do a favor for my friend. And right. I'm afraid that that kind of culture, and I was at the department for a long time, which existed, the idea that anyone would ever have a conversation with anybody at the White House when an important case was, well, no way, you didn't do that. when Reagan was president.
Well,
But now it's broken down. I mean, they do that all the time.
Let me bring this closer to home, Ms. Braveboy. Obviously, you as a former legislator, the Maryland State Legislature just passed a juvenile justice crime bill.
Yes.
There's no question that crime has to be reined in. Something has to be done. Don't you think with someone like a Donald Trump in the White House, who's a lawyer or a president, that maybe it can make the kind of job that you do, feeling that criminals should be responsible and accountable, a little easier?
You know, I felt very strongly that under the Biden administration, we got resources at the state level and trickled down to the local level to fight and combat violent crime. That's one of the reasons we're seeing a 30% decrease in carjackings in our communities. We also have an overall decrease in crime of about 11%. So we're seeing really the fruits of the labor of the Biden administration. I think part of the issue is that it was not articulated in that way. The messaging did not happen. But when it comes to law and order, it always starts at the top. So not only are we concerned about the selection, at least at this point, for Attorney General, but all of the U.S. attorneys are also appointed by the president. And if the values reflected in the appointment of the Attorney General trickle down to U.S. attorneys across the state of, across the country, I think prosecutors like me are going to be very concerned because we have to coordinate with them.
But if you take your U.S. attorney, Eric Barron.
Yes.
You take the state attorney for Baltimore, Ivan Bates.
Yes.
You take yourself. Some would refer to you guys as conservatives, law and order, and how you enforce crime. Because it's independent of who's in the White House to you, you must protect your citizens first.
It is, but we are able to work with agencies that are under the jurisdiction of our U.S. attorney because we trust our U.S. attorney. We trust the reasoning behind some of the decisions they make. We trust the people that they have in place to prosecute cases and to work with us. So it's a relationship based on trust. And my concern is that that there will be a lack of trust potentially based on who he decides to select for these very critical positions.
These selections are important. So Bruce, how do you balance the need for justice reform with maintaining public safety during these political transitions?
Well, I don't think the transition causes any greater complexity or otherwise. It's not like the law gets suspended. I wanted to comment on U.S. attorneys.
Please.
They're appointed by the senators. I've worked in the Justice Department. The senators decide who gets to be the U.S. attorney.
Yes, but that's if your senator happens to be of the same party as the president.
But Van Hollen and Alsobrooke are not.
But they
have say-so in it.
Yeah.
They'll have say-so, but ultimate say-so they will not have. Prior to the Eric Barron being the U.S. attorney, there was a Republican U.S. attorney assigned to the state of Maryland, and so I am certain that the senators then didn't necessarily support that nomination, but they said, you know, it was not a bad selection. It was a good selection because ultimately we are talking about a set of laws that should not rely on a party to be able to enforce them.
But the law.
But it is the law. But let's be clear that Democratic senators will not have the same influence that they have when there is a Democratic administration in the White House as they won't have that same.
But Republicans are not all the same ink.
They're
John
not.
Thune and Cornyn is not the same as Rick Scott.
They're not.
Agreed.
And we're going to come back. Don't go away.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. Please continue, Bruce.
I'm just saying that the Republicans are not all the same. So they don't all do the bidding. They're not Donald Trump cutouts. We know that Donald Trump was very much in favor of Rick Scott to be majority leader. He got the first cut and knocked out. He was not in favor of Thune. He was not in favor of Cornyn. And so the Republicans, especially at that level, where they view it as kind of their patronage, they're going to defend their own person. Now, it may not be somebody that you like, but even if Trump says, I'm not going to nominate them, the senators have a veto because they have blue slip process. Hey, we don't return the blue slip, you never got a kind of confirmation here.
What do you think? What role do you think political polarization plays in influencing public trust in the judicial system?
I think that there has been commentary that the Republicans are for law and order and the Democrats are not. And that's simply not true. In fact, in so many ways, violent crime has impacted more Democratic-leaning districts than even Republican districts. So we feel the impact of crime, and my residents certainly want us to do something about it. So they believe in the rule of law, but they also believe in fairness in the justice system. They also want rehabilitation and opportunities for people to be restored, but ultimately they want accountability, and they want people to face consequences.
Do you anticipate any significant, Bruce, legislative changes in the justice system after this election? If so, what areas should we focus on?
I don't think it's a question of legislative changes. Armstrong, we've got so many laws on the books now, that would make the founding fathers shocked. We've got 200,000 regulations, many of those are criminal penalties. We just need even-handed and clear enforcement of the laws that are there, which is the problem and what you've touched upon. It's warped, it's uneven-handed. Everybody is not treated the same. The Foreign Agents Registration Act is not applied equally. The obstruction of justice is not applied equally. And the Attorney General, and because there's so many laws on the books, the FBI, they can kind of pick and choose what laws they want to prioritize. We can't enforce everything. We don't have enough resources with 340 million population out there. So we don't need new laws. If anything, we need fewer laws in empowering our investigative branch to spy on you and me and you without warrants. The National Security Agency, I think, is out of control. They can get into your bank records without any notice to you because that's viewed, you shared it with the bank, and they can disclose and have access to your information about your private transactions. If anything, we ought to be scaling back how many laws the department has to go after you.
So let me raise this, because I know many people privately would like to see you as the next Prince George's County executive, though you're focused on the role that you're in now. But looking at the bigger picture, how can voters ensure that their concerns about justice and governance are prioritized by candidates?
I think they have to ask the question and also look at the record. In my role as state's attorney, I absolutely prioritize violent crimes, prosecuting violent crimes. We have an over 95% conviction rate in our homicide unit. We have over 90% felony conviction rate because we are focused on ensuring that those who have committed the most serious offenses in our community are held accountable. And so we have to ask those tough questions. I think oftentimes at community forums, we kind of just we ask about other things, right? Things that are important, but ultimately crime impacts everyone, not just residents, but also the business community. If we want restaurants in our community, we want good shopping in our community, we are going to have to continue to cut down the amount of crime that we have so that businesses want to move in and invest in our community. So we all have a vested interest in keeping crime under control.
And we will return with some final thoughts.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
You know, what is the one thing we've not talked about today? We have about 2 minutes left that you want to talk about, Ms. Braveboy.
You know, one thing I want to talk about is just the fact that I think that the Democratic Party did not do a good job of messaging to our key constituencies about what the administration had done and what the vision was for them. People are suffering. I live in an area where we're kind of insulated from some of the issues of the economy because we are here near the federal government. We've got a lot of people who have, you know, degrees and they're working in government contracting. They're relatively affluent, and so what people like who are in my role still have to understand the plight of others. And I think that the party did not do that very well, did not message very well, and did not get across to people that they really cared about the issues that they were facing personally. And my hope is that as we move forward as a party, that we begin to really drill down and not just talk amongst ourselves about what the issues are, but actually go to those communities most impacted by inflation and the fluctuation of the economy and get feedback directly from them.
Boy, the Supreme Court could belong to conservatives for the next several decades, Bruce.
Yeah, but I think the one I want to talk about is, hey, don't rely on the government. It starts in the home, it starts in the schools, it starts in the pulpit. If you want crime fighting to start there, you have kids raised properly, they understand their obligations to obey the law. That needs to be reinforced in school, that we all hang together, we all hang separately. We can't blame all on government not being perfect, because it starts with us.
Wow, I've never known that you could be so brief in your remarks, but you were. Ms. Braveboy, it is always an honor to have someone reasonable with common sense. That's what the American people want. Somebody's bringing common sense back. It's become so uncommon. Bruce, we always appreciate you, having you in our studios. And on behalf of all of us at WJLA 24/7 and the Armstrong Williams Show, thank you so much for joining us.
Always good.